Fran, we're back in Philadelphia.
That's right.
Believe it or not, welcome to the Journey to the Draft podcast. Chris McPherson alongside Fran Duffy. Yes, we have returned from our week in Indianapolis. Lots of observations, lots of news to get into. We're going to kick things off with Draft Buzz with Tony Pauline, draftanalyst.com. Again, he broke one of the biggest stories from the Combine in Indianapolis. Our pick 6 is going to be 6 players who we want to go back and learn more about after our time in Indianapolis. Our Mr. Relevant did a phenomenal job in the booth this week alongside Rich Eisen, none other than Daniel Jeremiah. DJ Move the Sticks himself from NFL Network. Our unofficial visit is Will Harris, the defensive back from Boston College. And we've got a lot of your questions. I absolutely loved the way the daily podcast went in Indianapolis because we had so many great questions, so much engagement from the fans, and it's like a snowball, an avalanche. It just keeps on rolling here. So
no question.
We should really do a segment about the 6 things that I learned about Fran Duffy while in Indianapolis, but we could save that probably for
I'm a little terrified by that.
another time. So we will actually, part of one of our segments here, working in here, it's not official on the clock, but we got to go through your combine predictions and see how you perform.
Like the previews.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
We can do that. We'll do that in mailbag.
We'll do a mailbag. Perfect way to kick that off. So again, so much to get into. Again, make sure to rate, leave a comment wherever you listen to our podcast. We appreciate all of the support. But let's get into the action and kick things off with a little Draft Buzz.
Now it's time for Draft Buzz.
Let's kick off this edition of Draft Buzz with Tony Pauline from draftanalyst.com, at Tony Pauline on Twitter, the man who delivered the biggest news coming out of the Combine. Kyler Murray, the big story, and Tony reporting that it's a done deal, that he's going to go to number 1 overall to the Arizona Cardinals. Tony, great to hear from you. How you doing?
I'm okay, but let's just clarify a few things. What I said was that Cliff Kingsbury is saying it's a done deal,
yes,
but as I said in the article, I'm not sure that Cliff Kingsbury has the final say. That all being said, I mean, it looks like Kyler Murray is going to be the first pick of the draft. I would say 90% to the Arizona Cardinals, 10% to another team if they want to package picks and move up to that number 1 slot.
All right, so let's get into the winners and losers from the week in Indianapolis, and we'll kind of go rapid fire position by position here, and we'll start with the quarterbacks. Already talking about Kyler Murray. Who would you say, Tony, was the big winner? Was it Kyler Murray himself?
In the media it was, but I think on the field it was Jarrett Stidham. I mean, Jarrett Stidham had one of those passing workouts that was almost flawless. He showed great timing. He showed great accuracy. He was throwing dimes 45 yards down the field, displaying good speed, good accuracy, putting the ball out in front of receivers, was hitting those deep outs where the receivers weren't waiting for the ball, was almost hitting the cone, which is placed 35 yards on the deep out if the ball hadn't hit the receiver's hand. So I thought Jarrett Stidham really improved on his Senior Bowl performance with a tremendous workout at the Combine.
All right, and then on the flip side, who left Indianapolis with more questions than answers, so to speak?
Will Greer. I just thought he was terrible. Passes were all over the place. He showed no timing, which is a problem, but he was inaccurate. I mean, Dwayne Haskins was a little bit off on his timing. Greer was off on his timing and his accuracy, overthrowing receivers, throwing when they're moving left, he's throwing to the right. I think Greer had a chance to be a second-day pick. I think when all is said and done, it's probably a 4th rounder.
All right, Tony, let's get to the running back position. The big winner and the big loser. Who affected their stock the most at a position that Eagles fans are very excited to hear more about?
I like Darrell Henderson, a guy we've talked about on this podcast a couple times. As I've said, he's being compared to Devonta Freeman of the Atlanta Falcons. Came in a hair under 5'8.5", 208 pounds, ran a solid 4.49 in the 40. Some hand times had him as fast as 4.36. Good athletic workout. Then he did very well in position drills.
And then on the flip side, who hurt his stock in Indianapolis?
Got to say Devin Singletary. I mean, people were talking him about being a second-day pick. I never saw it on film, and I definitely didn't see it in the athletic workouts. 5'7.5", 203 pounds, runs a 4.66 with a 1.53 10 time, which is pretty good. But many of his other marks were below what the top running backs did. I never saw it on film with Singletary. As far as being a football player, an early pick, he definitely isn't an early selection athlete.
All right, so from the wide receiver standpoint, All right. Everyone was raving about DK Metcalf from the physical standpoint, the size, the strength, the straight line speed. But the thing is, all those stories seem to come out, before the 3-cone and the shuttle times were released, which kind of threw a bit of a wet blanket on the 40 times and some of his other performances. Who do you think was the big winner from the wide receiver position, unless you think it was Metcalf?
I don't think it was Metcalf. I don't think there were any big winners. I thought A.J. Brown of Mississippi, his teammate, did well. But I got to say N'Keal Harry. I'm going to say N'Keal Harry because I think he exceeded expectations, and that's what the combine is. You have got to run faster than people think. You've got to jump higher than people think. You've got to do better catching the ball, throwing the ball, or in drills than people think. And I think Harry did all that. Didn't run the 3-cone or the shuttle, but still his 4.5 3:40 time was a terrific mark for a guy that many thought could run in the 4.6s. They were even saying potentially 4.7s, 38.5-inch vert. I thought when all said and done, Harry was the big winner and has solidified himself. Probably in the early part of round 2.
On the flip side, who hurt his stock the most at the wide receiver position?
Got to be lil'jordan Humphrey. I mean, 4.75 at 210 pounds, only a 33.5-inch vertical jump. Couldn't reach 9 feet couldn't reach 10 feet in the broad jump. Those are numbers. Those are mediocre numbers for a top tight end. When a 210-pound receiver is posting those numbers, that's a big red flag.
Yeah, Tony, I had started to hear some buzz that lil'jordan Humphrey could make that move to tight end that you alluded to. But as we get to the tight end position, who was the big winner in your mind? Who helped himself the most out in Indianapolis at tight end?
It's got to be Noah Fant. I mean, all season long, his teammate T.J. Hockerson outplayed him, but there's no doubt at the combine, Noah Fant was much better. I mean, 4.50 in the 40, terrific 1.55 split, which is faster than many of the receivers, 39.5-inch vert. Some terrific 3-cone times at 6.81. I mean, that's a good time for a defensive back. So I think physically, Noah Fant's a freak. We know he's been a solid pass catcher. It's just a matter of him upping his production and stepping up his game on the field, and he's got the physical skills to do so.
And then conversely, who was the big slider at the tight end position?
Got to be Caden Smith. I mean, you and I talked about Caden Smith back in October as a guy who was moving up draft boards, and teams thought he could be a first-round pick and be the first tight end selected. 4.92 in the 40 with a 1.68 10 split, only 32 inches in the vertical jump. If memory serves me, Rennell ran at 318 pounds, touched 32 inches. 9-foot broad jump. Those are average numbers for a big defensive lineman, and this is a 255-pound tight end. He's still a good pass catcher. There'll be a place for him at the next level, but his place in the draft is likely now in the 6th round.
Interesting there. Now, going to the offensive line, there's no, I think, clear-cut number one pick in terms of who will be the first player along the O-line selected here. So the combine was very fascinating. I think on the field in terms of timing and testing, Andre Dillard performed well. Cody Ford did well in the positional drills. Who do you think was the big winner from the offensive line standpoint?
I was going to go with Garrett Bradbury, but I got to go with Andre Dillard because the fact that he plays left tackle, 315 pounds, ran in the mid 4.9s, a solid 29-inch vertical jump for a 315-pounder. The 10 split was excellent at 1.69. A 4.4 short shuttle, which was a real good number. I mean, Andre Dillard, I think Garrett Bradbury solidified himself as a first-rounder, but I think Dillard's performance as a left tackle really helped improve his stock at least a half round.
Do you think Dillard will be the first offensive lineman selected, or is it still Jonah Williams or possibly Jawan Taylor from Florida?
Yeah, I never had Jonah Williams as the first offensive lineman selected. I still think it's going to be Jawan Taylor somewhere, probably maybe to Jacksonville if they sign Nick Foles or a few picks afterwards.
All right, and on the other side, who comes out of Indianapolis with his draft stock limping a little bit?
Nate Herbig. I mean, he basically performed himself out of the draft. 4.52 in the 40 with a 1.86. 10 split, that's awful. 24 reps on the 24-inch vertical jump. 7.6 the broad jump. There's just no redeeming athletic factor in his game at 335 pounds. He did not perform well. He looked sloppy. That's a bad combination. So I think Herbig, if he gets drafted, and he was a junior who entered the draft, he thought he was going to go high. If he gets drafted, it's going to be in the very late rounds.
Tony, let's get over to the defensive side. The defensive end, outside linebacker, the edge player position. Who helped themselves the most out on the edge?
Everyone said Montez Sweat, and as we previewed, Montez Sweat had the workout that I thought he was going to have. I got to go with Rashawn Gary. 4.58 in the 40 at 277 pounds, a 38-inch vertical jump. I love his 10 split at 1.63 seconds, 10 feet even in the broad, 26 reps on the bench press with arms that were just shy of 34.5 inches long. He's a guy who's got 277 pounds. He's an edge rusher. He's a defensive end in a 4.3. He could eventually be a defensive end in a 3.4 as he physically matures. Guy's got great upside. People talk about the production. I understand that, but his shoulder was injured in 2018. Go back and watch the 2017 film when he could not be stopped.
And then on the other side of the coin, was there a pass rusher or a defensive end that hurt their stock the most over the course of the past week?
It's got to be Ja'Kai Polite. All the interviews and what I'm hearing, it was not a good situation. He has the ability to rectify it, but even when he did work out, 32 inches in a vertical jump, 4.84 in the 40 with a 1.7, 1.10 split. It was just a bad week for Ja'Kai Polite. I'm hearing things about character issues, red flags before the combine. It all it up to really a poor performance of someone that definitely hurt their draft stock.
All right, along defensive tackle, the top players seem to shine. Quinnen Williams ran the fastest 40 for any defensive lineman over 300 pounds. Do you think that he solidified his chance to potentially be the first player that's not Kyler Murray or a quarterback taken number 1 overall? And do you think that he was the big winner among the defensive tackles in Indy?
Ordinarily, I would say yes to the question, would he be the first player not named Kyler Murray to be selected in the draft? The problem is that number 2 pick is San Francisco 49ers, and they need more of an edge rusher than they do a guy like Quinnen Williams, though I think Quinnen Williams is the best player in the draft. I'm going to go back to what I said before. The combine is about expectations. And with that said, I thought Tristan Hill of Central Florida had one of the best overall workouts. He was solid with his testing numbers, 5.04 in the 40 with a 1.7.4 10-yard split, 35 inches in a vertical jump, which is an outstanding number for a guy that's 308 pounds. 28 reps on the bench for a guy that's got 33.5-inch arms, but he was terrific in position drills. Very fluid, moving laterally. Ran a solid 7.7 in the 3-cone, 4.38 in the short shuttle. He basically moved to that speed on the field. Good change of direction, fluid through all the drills. I think Tristan Hill probably came into the combine as a third-day pick, and I think as he flew out of Indianapolis, he is now a second-day selection.
All right, and on the flip side, who left you wanting more from the interior defensive lineman?
Absolutely Terry Beckner, a guy who I like on film, but his testing numbers were terrible at 296 pounds. Ran a 5.19, which isn't bad usually, but in 2019, believe it or not, that's kind of a slow time. 10-yard split was 1.86, which is not good. Only a 24.5-inch vertical jump. 7.97 in the 3-cone, which is more than a quarter of a second slower than Tristan Hill. 4.82 in the short shuttle, which is more than a half second slower than Tristan Hill. So, from a testing standpoint, Terry Beckner did not look good, which is ironic because on film he looks like a very explosive player. You would think would have a good 10-yard split. He moves well laterally. He's got a good change of direction, which would make you think that short shuttle time and the 3-cone time should have been faster.
Tony, let's go to the linebacker position. A number of guys really, really impressed. Obviously, Devin White, Devin Bush did a great job in the athletic workout. Were one of those guys one of your big winners, or was there somebody else that you kind of singled out at this position?
It's got to be Devin Bush, and I'll tell you exactly why. 6.93 in the 3-cone. When I watch Devin Bush on film, he looked more like a straight line type of guy who had some ability to get outside the box, but he was not effective in reverse. I think that 3-cone time was outstanding for him at 234 pounds. I was also impressed with him during position drills. Especially in coverage drills. He looked fluid and smooth pedaling in reverse. So it's just a matter of coaching him up to do what he did during combine position drills to do it on game day.
And then on the other side of it, was there somebody that you were a little bit disappointed with coming out of Indianapolis?
Got to be Terrell Hanks. I mean, here's a guy who was good during his senior season at New Mexico State, was also very good as a junior, had a terrific Senior Bowl, runs 4.98 with a 1.710 split. That's horrible. 35.5-inch vertical jump. They were saying that he hurt his hamstring. I'm hearing a little bit differently. I was told that after his first 40 time, he received a call that said shut it down, and he didn't run again. So we'll have to wait and see what his pro day times are. Unless the pro day times are in the low 4.6s, that combine time is going to be a bigger red flag than any of us can imagine.
Very fascinating, because this is something that Fran and I noticed while watching the drills in Lucas Oil Stadium. You would see the players, they would perform one of the events and then go to the sideline, go to their bag, and they would pull out their phone and be checking stuff. And you wonder, as you brought up there, Tony, are they getting advice from an agent saying, that's a good enough time, let's get out, or we need to move on to something else? You wonder if that type of stuff takes place, almost like they're getting coaching from the outside. Tony, last couple spots here, the defensive backs worked out on Monday. From the corner standpoint, who was your big winner from Indianapolis?
I love David Long. I mean, he was the guy who I was very high on coming into the process, had him as a third round pick. Solid speed at 4.45 in the 40. 39.5-inch vertical jump, but I look at these short shuttle and three-cone numbers, 3.97 in the short shuttle, 6.45 in the three-cone, which is outstanding. I think he's a terrific cover corner. I think he definitely improved his draft stock.
All right, and on the flip side, this was not a great corner class going into the draft, so you talked a lot about expectations. Were there any who you were hoping for more from that you thought maybe would help his draft stock with a nice performance, but instead his draft stock is hurting leaving Indy?
Well, I'll take it from a different angle. I mean, Sunday night when we previewed it, I had said all along that don't expect big things from DeAndre Baker, because I was not hearing good things about his combine preparation, and that turned out to be the case. 4.52 in the 40s, not too bad. 9.10 in the broad is not very good, but he was not good in the position drills, which basically was the result of everything that I had heard, that he was not taking it seriously, that he had kind of a laissez-faire attitude towards it. Just not smooth in his pedal, very off balance. And again, as Fran and I talked about during the season, during the 2018 season, here's a guy who struggles making plays with his back to the ball, never gets his head back around. And you really saw that in position drills. It's basically someone who likes to turn and run with the receivers and then break up the pass when it's in the receiver's hands. I just saw nothing redeeming in DeAndre Baker's position drills when he was moving in reverse, which is good, again, going to be a red flag. I never had him as a first-round pick. I always thought he was a second-round selection. I think he's probably moved down some into the late part of round 2.
All right, Tony, final position. Let's talk about safeties. Who was the one safety that you thought helped themselves the most on Monday?
Again, a guy we spoke about on Sunday, Juan Thornhill, basically met all the rumors and whispers I heard about him and really beat expectations. 4.42 in the 40 with a 1.52 10 split. That's terrific. 44-inch vertical jump, 11-foot 9-inch broad jump. I believe he had 21 reps on the bench, was number 2. Listen, we knew Juan Thornhill was a good player. We knew he had good instincts. The thing about Juan Thornhill we questioned and we wondered about was his athleticism. Well, I'll tell you what, the combine numbers prove he's a hell of an athlete, so he's definitely going to lead. He definitely leads Indianapolis with an improved draft grade.
And then on the other side of it, a slider from the safety spot.
Got to be Mike Bell. I mean, someone, again, that we talked about during the season. Teams liked him. I knew he was going to enter the draft. But when you're 210 pounds and you run a 4.83, you basically said goodbye to the draft. You're not going to be selected at any point in time. He may have to be used as a linebacker now, the way the Cardinals used Deion Buchanan. But his other numbers were not that great either. 30 inches in the vertical jump. Again, Rennell Rennett, 318 pounds, touched 32 inches. 9'10" in the broad jump. It's not a good number. And only 10 on the bench when guys like Juan Thornhill were putting up 21. So it wasn't bad. It was a terrible performance, a terrible weekend for Mike Bell overall.
Tony, before we wrap things up here, what's next on the docket for you? The Combine is in the rearview mirror. Free agency is coming up for the NFL teams. But from your standpoint, what are you digging into at this point?
Pro days, which, believe it or not, start today. Miami of Ohio and Purdue have their pro days. In fact, I'm sure one of them is just about done. So the pro day schedule, we go right from the Combine workouts into the pro day schedule. And there are going to be some big pro days because, everyone's going to be talking about Kyler Murray, but you got Ja'Kai Polite, who we spoke about, and there are some other players, Ed Oliver, who didn't run the 40. that people are going to be concentrating on at the top of the draft, and then you've got some mid-level and even guys who want to be undrafted priority free agents that are going to have to perform well who were not at the combine.
Tony Pauline, make sure to read his positional recaps from the 4 days of workouts in Indianapolis on PhiladelphiaEagles.com and the Eagles app, and check out the rest of his work on DraftAnalyst.com as well as on Twitter at Tony Pauline. He was name dropped in Peter King's column on Monday for that big breaking news he had regarding Kyler Murray. Tony Pauline, thank you very much once again. As always, up next, Pick Six, 6 players who Fran and I want to learn more about following the Combine in Indianapolis.
Now it's time for Pick Six.
All right, great stuff as always from Tony Pauline, and it's going to generate a lot of headlines there for fans listening to in terms of the biggest winners and losers at each position. So 6 players this week we want to go back and learn more about after seeing them in Indianapolis. And Fran, I'll let you kick things off here because I had to do a little scrambling. If you're watching the video version, as Tony was going through his winners and losers, we didn't talk to Tony. We just told him that's what we want to do for the segment. You know, he didn't give us a preview of who he was going to discuss, but he's going through the names, and Tristan Hill was one of my guys, so I'm like, all right, now I got to come up with another name, and then I'm like sweating the last couple of picks. Like, I feel like Howie Roseman on draft weekend, you know, you're hoping that the guy you want is going to still be there, and all of a sudden he's not. So.
Sure. Well, mine was easy to kind of come up with the very first guy, and that's Miles Boykin, the wide receiver from Notre Dame. You know, everyone talked about DK Metcalf. Miles Boykin had a workout that was very, very similar and honestly better across the board when you look at the shuttles and, you know, what he was able to do from a change of direction standpoint. I have not yet watched Boykin. There were, like 30 receivers that declared for the draft. So trying to crush as many of these guys as possible. Boykin wasn't very productive over the course of the last couple of years in Notre Dame. I know he was one of their leading receivers, but overall production wasn't there. Slipped through the cracks, hadn't watched him, was planning on watching him anyway, but now he's bumped up to the top of the list. You know, he's going to be one of the first guys that I watch now that we're home from Indianapolis. So Miles Boykin's certainly going to be on the radar, and for a guy that tested like that at his size, keep in mind, a guy that's that big to move that well, to me, I mean, he's probably in that day 2 conversation right now.
For me, I'm going to go to the running back position, stay on offense here, and I was real intrigued to learn about Devin Singletary, but as Tony said, he didn't have a great workout in Indianapolis, which you really can't knock him on because straight line speed, I think, was going to be a question regardless. There's, you know, the LaShawn McCoy comparisons with the long speed there. So, but one player who not only from his college days, but also his interview during the media, and that's Damian Harris from Alabama, who came off so polished, someone who could definitely take command of the room, someone who absolutely loves the film study aspect of things. You know, Josh Jacobs is the one Alabama running back in this draft class who many say is the only one they're putting, say, a first-round grade on. But when you're looking at the Eagles and maybe trying to add someone to this running back mix, I'm intrigued to learn more about Damian Harris, who seems like he checks off a lot of the boxes for the character off the field. Now does the on-field play. And I know you've said this before, and you kind of reiterate this almost every episode of how because of the Eagles' multiplicity in the run game, any type of running back can fit, but you still would like to see what type of back he could be in this offense.
Yeah, he's a guy, I remember listening to a little bit of his media session that you mentioned, and I wrote down one note. You know what you're getting in Damian Harris.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, he's a guy walking in the building, you know. I mean, the guy's a grown man. Like, he's going to come in, he's going to handle his business, do all the right things. I was very, very impressed by Damian Harris. I'm going to stick at running back.
Okay.
And I'm going to go with a guy that really worked out very well, and I hadn't watched him yet, was Alex Barnes from Kansas State. For a guy, again, at that size, you know, over 220 pounds, to work out across the board the way that he did, I was impressed with what he looked like physically. You know, we saw him up close for drills. I was pretty impressed with him, so I'm excited to go back and watch more. Again, a guy who tested very well across the board, wasn't really on my radar, hadn't studied him yet. Mm-hmm. Now he's got to be up at the top of the list of guys that I've got to get eyes on quickly.
I'm going to go to the defensive side of the ball, and I was going to have Tristan Hill here from Central Florida because just really he wasn't on my radar at all and had a very, very impressive workout. But someone else who we actually have gotten to see, and Ben Bonogo from Texas Christian University, the edge rusher. When you just talk about everyone's talking about Montez Sweat and the workout he had, and Tony touched on that in his segment. But Ben also looks the part and had a very, very impressive on-field workout. Maybe not quite to the level of Montez Sweat, but Bonogo had a great workout in his own right. And now the question becomes, maybe why didn't we always see that on the field? while at TCU. And I think that's really what the combine is for, is to say who are guys who should be on our radar, and then maybe it's like, okay, he's piqued our interest because of his athletic workout. What did we miss on the tape? Why didn't that production match what we just saw on the field in Indy?
Yeah, I think when you look at Banigou, he started his career, I want to say it was either Louisiana Monroe or Louisiana Lafayette. It was one of those two schools, and he transferred up to TCU. Was newcomer of the year in the Big 12 2 seasons ago in 2017. He was very, very productive. And even last year, the production was solid. The question was, all right, what kind of pass rusher is he? Because he's a guy that I know wants to win the edge. He's a guy that wants to run the hoop, but can he develop more of a pass rush plan? Can he develop more of an all-around game? Can he defend the run? That's why when you look at him versus L.J. Collier didn't have the production that Banigou did, but looked like a more well-rounded, more versatile football player.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was very intrigued by the workout that he posted. I think that was something that certainly helped himself there. I'm going to go with a guy at linebacker that I, again, haven't studied yet, but the numbers really have piqued my interest, is Blake Cashman, the linebacker from Minnesota. The production was there with Cashman. I know he had been a guy that was right around 100 tackles over the course of the last few years, but the numbers were outstanding from an athletic standpoint, known as a high motor kid, a sideline-to-sideline player. I'm excited to go and study Blake Cashman because, again, have not watched him at all.
All right, last but not least, he was the practice player of the week at the Senior Bowl, one of the practice players of the week, and someone who, and again, when Fran and I were at the Senior Bowl, we watched the defensive backs, and it's a tougher group to watch, but nonetheless, though, was a practice player of the week down there, had a really good workout, and that's Darnell Savage from Maryland. And also someone who came off as very mature, very poised when talking to the media. He was actually Les Bowen from the Philly Daily News asked about all the adversity that they had with the passing of their teammate and that whole situation. And Darnell said that he felt like he had to take it upon himself to be more of a vocal leader to kind of keep things together. So, again, it's a position that the Eagles could address early potentially in this draft because you know what you have with Malcolm and Rodney McLeod. You have Trey Sullivan come back, and he grew a lot in his second year in the league, his first of getting actual on-field playing time. But you have that other guy kind of waiting in the wings. So it would be intriguing to go back and watch more Darnell Savage to see if he potentially could be that developmental piece for the Eagles secondary.
And he had an outstanding workout as well. I mean, the workout for Darnell Savage was really, really good. So he's one of those players now that you're starting to just check off boxes. Tape was good, leadership, Senior Bowl was great, Combine was great. I mean, you're checking off boxes with Darnell Savage.
I was wondering when we got to Tony and his winner for safety if that was going to be Savage, but Thornhill's workout was absolutely off the charts. So that's pick six players we want to go back and learn more about after their performances in Indianapolis. A little bit, we're going to have our unofficial visit. Fran caught up with Will Harris, a safety from Boston College.
Who also had a very good workout.
Yes, he did.
Will Harris tested very well.
So, but first, Mr. Relevant, it's going to be Daniel Jeremiah, Move the Sticks himself from NFL Network. He himself had an outstanding combine, being in the main set there with Rich Eisen, timing Rich Eisen on the sideline there during his Run Rich Run to raise money for St. Jude's in the 40-yard dash. We're actually going to talk a little bit about that in our draft mailbag, but first let's get to our interview with Daniel Jeremiah from NFL Network.
It's time for Mr. Relevant.
Proud to welcome former Eagles scout, NFL Network draft analyst, the lead guy, Daniel Jeremiah, here on Philadelphia.com and our social media channels. And DJ, you've been in the draft room with Howie Roseman, and I'm sure he's chomping at the bit after getting so close back to the Super Bowl last year, then winning it the previous year to get back there in 2019.
No question. And, look at where they were last year, even with some of the things that transpired during the season, to be where they were knocking on that door again. I think the foundation is in great shape there. Reinforcement time. Go get some reinforcements. And where that takes place, you could look at the offensive line, getting some youth there along the offensive line. The running back position probably needs to be addressed. And I like some of the young players in that secondary, but you can always have more pass rushers. You can always have more corners.
Okay, you mentioned running back. And you actually, on your conference call, compared Devin Singletary, the explosive, exciting running back out of Florida Atlantic, to LaShawn McCoy. What did you see on Singletary's tape that made you give him that comparison?
Yeah, he's a little bit smaller, a little bit shorter than McCoy, but we saw it for so many years. In tight quarters, you'd be, okay, this is a tackle for loss. And somehow Shady just finds a way to slip out of there. This kid can get himself out of trouble, and just that elusiveness, that ability inside a hallway to not get touched. He has that. Now, we're anxious to see what his top-end speed looks like, because that's a little bit of the concern. Like, does he have that home run speed to be able to take the distance?
McCoy didn't really have that either.
Yeah,
though.
but he never got caught. That was the crazy thing. You know, and I know what he ran. I think he ran in like the low 4.5s. But every time Shady busted out in the open field, I can't remember him ever getting caught.
DJ, you mentioned pass rushers. But when you think about pass rushers these days, do you include the tackles in the mix as well?
Yeah, absolutely. You're trying to find pressure wherever you can get it. And I think, a lot of people would prefer inside pressure versus, pressure coming off the edge. You can't get away from it, when it's coming up the middle in your face. When you got some edge pressure as a quarterback, if you're firm inside, you've got an opportunity to kind of climb up and escape that pressure. If it's coming at your face, nothing you can do.
So you didn't like that when you were in college playing quarterback?
I didn't like any pressure. I don't want pressure coming from anywhere.
In your initial mock draft, and a lot's changed since then, but you had Christian Wilkins, talented tackle from Clemson, going to the Eagles at number 25. But at the same time, you have your top 50 prospects.
He's
and you
way
have
up there.
Ranked number 4 overall. Do you think there's any chance that Wilkins can make it? And can you give us a scouting report on him and maybe those other talented Clemson defensive linemen? Because you pretty much can put any of them there for the Eagles.
Yeah, look, he to me, I have him as a top 5 player. Now, talking to folks around the league, I'm probably a little bit higher on him than they are, which is fine. I'm not trying to mirror what they're doing. I'm trying to have my own evaluation. Certainly. I just love what he brings to the table, and then everything I know about him and have heard about him from a leadership standpoint, a character standpoint, it's off the charts. So I've seen a consistently productive player who's disruptive. Sure, there's going to be times you're going to see him get caught a little bit high and turned and dumped a little bit in the run game. But with the way the game's played right now, interior pass rush, as we discussed, is so big. That's why I'm high on him. I don't think he'll get there. I don't think he'll fall all the way to the Eagles when it's said and done. I think he probably is going to find his way. Probably, if I was going to put a number on it, 8 to 16, somewhere in that range is where he ends up falling. But he's got a lot of talented teammates too. Farrell is somebody that's not that's going to wow you with his burst and his get-off speed, but he's got power. He plays with his hands. He can dominate against the run. And when he got an opportunity to step up in competition, you watch him against Alabama, and I thought he completely dominated Jonah Williams in that game. So he's a real intriguing edge rusher. If he tests well, he's going to go in the top 15 because that'll be unexpected. We don't expect to see that. But then you've got Dexter Lawrence, who I'm anxious to see how much he weighs, because you hear that he carried 340-plus pounds, and he's a dominant run player. But in a passing league, he's got to show that he's got a little more upside as a rusher. So I've been told maybe he drops a little weight, and maybe we see some of that here on the field this week. And then you've got Austin Bryant is another one. They've got 4 defensive linemen here. It's ridiculous.
Are there any key traits that you've noticed from studying the Eagles over the years and working with the Eagles that kind of stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, the word I would say is tenacious. Tenacious, tough football players. They've tried to really build the team that matches the city. And they did it to the point where they got a Super Bowl off of that, finding that mentality in the players. I know he was dinged up last year, but Derek Barnett fits that mold, just tough, gritty. Again, somebody that's not going to run. He's not going to run a 4.5 40, but he fits what they're looking for from a mentality standpoint. And you look at even Avonte Maddox, you saw the year that he had, quick, explosive, yes, tough, physical, just got some grit and some nastiness to him. To me, that's what they find in football players.
Dan, as you've done your work on over 200 some odd prospects here in this draft class to this point, is there someone who you feel like you're higher on than others? You kind of mentioned Christian Wilkins there. And is there someone who's kind of left you wanting a little more than maybe what you've heard on the outside?
Yeah, I mean, I know I got a bunch of texts from around the league when I had Josh Jacobs as my 5th player, somebody that wasn't the starter at Alabama at running back, and limited touches, I think 140-something, but it's roughly the same number of touches as Kamara had coming out of Tennessee. And I like Kamara. I had him, I think, 23, 24. He fell to the 3rd round, which was a huge mistake by the league. If we had to do it over again, I think he'd be a top 10 pick. And so I said, look, where he goes, I don't care. I love his game, toughness, can run inside, can run outside, can catch the ball, can block. He can return kicks. So I put a big grade on him. I put him up there. And then the one that I struggle with, and again, it's still, you're working through this process all the way to the draft. I've watched a ton of Greedy Williams tape. I like him. I just don't love him. I see a lot of people talking about him as a top 10 pick. And to me, some of that short area quickness is not where I wanted to see it. And then the tackling is not good. So He's somebody I've heard talking to people this week. Go back and watch 2017. Maybe you see a little bit different player. So continue to work through the process.
And you're going to watch all the 2017 teams.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
That's why he's one of the best in the business. Down Jeremiah, thank you very much for joining us here on PhiladelphiaEagles.com.
The unofficial visit.
Pleased to be joined here by Boston College safety Will Harrison. Will, for fans who have yet to see you play, give us a quick scouting report of what you'll bring to the NFL.
I think I bring versatility and flexibility to my position.
Yeah.
Being a guy, a bigger safety, a longer safety who, will be able to play, in the box, near the line of scrimmage, man to man, on the island, on the perimeter, in any zone scheme. At Boston College we ran a multiple defense, so I'm very comfortable playing anything a coach really asks me to, in any zone scheme, man scheme. So.
All right, so I'm going to put this question to you then. All those different hats you wore, what was your favorite? If you had to pick one that was, this was my favorite thing to do, knowing that you could do everything, what was your number one thing you like to do most?
To be honest, I like playing man.
Okay.
I like playing man in the slot. I like doing everything that the coaches ask me to do, but at the same time, I've always took great pride in being a great man defender in the slot.
Who was the toughest guy you manned up in the slot over the course of the last couple of years?
I would have to say probably Greg Dortch.
Okay. Yep. And he's coming out this year
Greg,
from Wake Forest.
Yeah,
Why is
Greg
that?
Dortch is definitely one of them. I mean, he's just he has really good hip shift and really good change of direction. He's a quick guy, fast guy, and he's technically sound. And he's a playmaker.
A lot of people look at it and say, for a safety, all right, he's athletic, he's going to test well at the combine, he's going to be a great coverage player. That's not necessarily always the case, because you need to have some kind of, obviously, the mental side of it. Talk about some of the things outside of the physical qualities that you need to be a good man coverage defender.
Right. Well, I feel like you have to be a vocal leader. You have to be, the guy who gets everybody lined up, especially in the back end. You got to be, you got to have a high football IQ.
Yeah.
You got to, see things kind of before they happen, play with anticipation, and let your teammates know, hey, this is what I'm seeing. And make your alerts and checks before the play happens.
Yeah, and you have a couple of teammates in that Boston College secondary joining you in this draft. Talk about Cheevers and then Lucas Dennis as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's Hamp and Lucas, man. It's it was a blessing to be able to play with those guys, and we had so much fun together on the field. Our defensive coordinator really gave us the leeway to make our own checks and coverage calls on the field. So we had a lot of fun with that throughout our time here, and playing with a guy, a competitive guy like Hamp on the perimeter really makes your job easier as a safety. Same way with playing with another field general that Lucas Dennis is, and another great playmaker that Lucas Dennis is. Man, definitely made my job easier, but it was a fun ride playing with those guys.
It seems like you appreciate like the mental side of it, the academic side of the game.
For sure.
If you had to pick one cut without giving away the coverage call for your defensive scheme, what was your favorite coverage? It's third and long. It's got to have it play. What's your go-to coverage call here?
I like cover two man. Third
That's
and long.
my number one coverage.
Third and long. I like cover two man. Let everybody slip underneath all the out breaking routes. Let everyone playing below slip any routes that come across their face, and let the two safeties go and make a play on the ball.
Those corners can be aggressive. You got the
doubt.
guys over the top. No question. All right.
No
So
doubt.
last question for you. The feedback you've gotten from scouts so far. What is the one area where you feel, all right, I know I have to prove myself over the course of the next couple of months?
Right. Well, they just want to see me, come out here and compete. They just want to see me compete, and I pride myself on a guy who does that all the time. I'm a very competitive guy. I have a high motor, and I pride myself on that. And when I have those conversations with them, they echo the same thing. They just, they say to me, we see on film that, and we've seen, from scouting you that, you're a high motor guy with, a highly competitive spirit. So we just want to see you echo that again in the Senior Bowl, and that's what I plan to do.
Now it's time to hear from you, the fans.
All right, time for your questions. How many do we have?
Got a handful. Got a couple.
We're going over to the second page on this bad boy here. So, draft mailbag, your questions, and as we always say, if you leave a comment or a question on Apple Podcasts, we're going to get to it first.
Leave a rating, leave a comment, and you're going to get on the show immediately.
We don't lie. Shane B. 118 from Apple Podcasts says, love the pod. Great work. If you were the Eagles GM, if you're Howie Roseman, what would be your ideal first three selections?
I think really it's tough to go into it with that mindset, right? And I think really look, they're going to go in and they're going to say, okay, this is ideally this is how we want it to fall for us, but you can't go in saying, okay, we want a a running back, a defensive end, and a wide receiver. You can't go in with that mindset because that's how you reach for players. That's how you miss on good ones. So, I don't think that the Eagles going into last year's draft would have said, all right, ideally, we're going to take a tight end with our first pick.
No, not at all.
A great one falls to you, and you say, this guy's going to be a great player, and Dallas Goedert's going to be a great player. You jump at the opportunity to take a great player. And I think that's really the way to approach this is, let the draft board come to you. If something piques your interest that you want to try and move up, you do that. If you see a guy that you have as a blue chip player falling into the teens, you do that. If not, you wait for those guys to fall. If not, if you don't like what you have, or if you think you've got the opportunity to move back and still get good value, you do that. I think that's the best way to operate. There are teams out there that operate best player available that say, okay, this is going to be our plan going in. We want to address these 4 or 5 positions. I think that the way that the Eagles do it is the best way.
Certainly. I think what Howie and Joe Douglas, Andy Wild, the entire staff, they do a great job of getting a feel for what the other teams want and where the other teams are going. And they do a lot of mock draft exercises. I know we love to read them on all the different outlets, but they do them themselves to try to get a sense of, all right, under what scenario could player X be there for us at number 25? So you have that understanding where, like you said, Fran, if someone is sliding down the board, it's like, all right, maybe we didn't see this one coming. Let's go up and get this player.
You made the Jeremy Maclin reference
Yes, I did.
A couple podcasts ago.
Certainly in 2009, you thought he was going top 10, but when he was hanging there in the teens, you got to go up there and get him. So you kind of have that, and it goes back to the Fletcher Cox draft I look in 2012 where, he was such an outstanding draft pick, but the Eagles had to, feel confident that they could wait a while and not have to move up significantly because there were rumblings on that draft night. I recall that the Eagles may have to make a move into the top 7 to be able to get Fletcher Cox. They didn't have to do that. So it's diligent work on the Eagles' part to make sure that they are prepared for those scenarios. I'll throw out the positions, though, because I'm sure that's what Shane B wants to know. And I'm still looking at the trenches, okay? It's great they've gotten Isaac Seumalo and Jason Kelsey and Brandon Graham locked up to extensions, but still, that's where this team won. When they went to the Super Bowl, it was all in the trenches, the depth along the defensive line, the quality of play, for protecting Nick Foles in the playoff run and Carson Wentz before that. I'm not going to be upset if it's trench players early on in the draft.
I'd like to see also, maybe a dynamic element on offense.
I totally agree.
Explosive running back, explosive receiver, some kind of another explosive talent.
Yes. You look at, especially running back, the explosive production numbers from 2018 compared to 2017, that's something that the Eagles have to find a way to make up. Now, Doug Peterson did say you can scheme that type of stuff, but if you have a pure athlete who can generate those plays, it makes your job as a coach just a little bit easier.
No doubt.
So, all right, next question. We're going to Twitter here at DeFord_David. How do you rate, and this kind of goes along the point we were just talking about there, how do you rate explosive runs versus consistent positive yardage in a running back when
really,
scouting?
It's going to come down to how you feel about it as a coach. We've had this discussion on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast numerous times, and honestly, on the Journey to the Draft podcast, I know Ben Fennell talked about this. He and I talked about it in the fall on this show. Look, I mean, you look at Saquon Barkley.
That's the player who came to mind. Yep.
Saquon Barkley was one of the leaders in negative runs in the entire NFL. You might go, 1 yard, 2 yard, -2, -4, -3, +0, +63. And that's if you want to play that way, if you're okay with living that way as a run game, that's going to work. If not, that you might look in a different direction. I think that there's a case to be made for both.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to look. You can't go strictly by number because you can't just look. All right, let's look at the stat sheet and see exactly what he did. You got to find out exactly what led to those negative runs. What led to those shorter gains. What led to those bigger gains. It's I think you can make an argument either way because I liked Saquon Barkley a lot last year, despite the fact that was kind of his style. That being said, the Giants are trying to get him out of being that way. I mean, the Giants. So clearly, they see that as a negative. They're trying to get him to be more consistently positive as a runner.
Well, it goes to if you're going to have a percentage of runs that they're going to be short yardage or negative gains. It's like you got to waste plays from a volume standpoint just to be able to hope that you're going to be able to break one of those big plays. So
it's almost like a receiver that has issues with drops. Like we all say, all receivers have drops. Some receivers have more drops than others, and some people are more willing to say, you know what? We're willing to deal with the drops because this guy gives us big plays down the field. We talked about that with guys like Will Fuller coming out of Notre Dame, and you go down the list. There are lots of guys that have speed, have that dynamic playmaking quality that maybe they have a few drops, but they make up for it in other ways. I would look at it the same way from a running back standpoint.
All right, great question there. Next one from @Jeffrey_Warren. Of the day 3 quarterback projections, which do you think can be developed over the next couple of years into a prototypical NFL quarterback? And this is a pressing question for the Eagles because, with Nick Foles becoming a free agent, you've got Carson Wentz, you've got Nate Sudfeld competing for that number 2 spot. Where's that number 3 person going to come from? It potentially could be a late round pick.
Of the guys in day 3, the guys that I like most are Easton Stick from North Dakota State and Ryan Finley from NC State. To me, those are the two. They both come from pro-style offenses. They're both smart. They're both versatile. Easton Stick is pretty athletic. I think when you look at both of those guys, I feel really pretty good about their projections to the NFL. Maybe not as starting quality quarterbacks, guys that you would say are your franchise guys, but to stick in the NFL, I feel pretty good about those two. There's a couple other names that I would throw into that list as well as guys that are in that tier, but those would be the two for me that stand out.
Got it. Next question here from @11 the GOAT. Has there been a player whom you didn't think would be good for the Eagles, but now after the combine you do like them in Philadelphia?
It's a good question. I mean, honestly, it would be more. For me, it's more names that I just wasn't aware of. I can watch pretty much any player and say, like, okay, this is how he would help the Eagles. There every once in a while you might see like a pure 3-4 nose tackle and say, like, all right, like Greg Gaines from Washington.
That's
like,
funny you say that because
I'm not sure if he's going to be a fit. Maybe he could. Like there are certainly been guys that I've been wrong about in the past, but outside of that, I mean, I feel like Doug Peterson and this staff, like they do a really good job of leveraging a player's strengths and understanding, okay, this is how he fits, this is what he would do for us, whether it's a running back, a wide receiver, an offensive lineman on offense, defensively, a linebacker, a corner, like they've got a lot of different guys, different builds, different skill sets, and they make it work. I mean, there are obviously things that you want, ideally, but not everybody is going to be built in the ideal sense. I mean, all these guys are going to have flaws. Otherwise, they would all be first-round picks. So I think really when you look at it, a lot of these guys, pretty much all these guys, I would say, yeah, I could see him fitting here in Philadelphia.
I think it goes back to our pick 6. It's really the guys who weren't on your radar before, then now you're like kind of like, all right, I want to go check these guys out a little bit more.
Yep.
Next question comes from @NickLuke3. Does Anthony Nelson fit with the Eagles? Talking about player fits. If so, which round should he be expected to be drafted by? Tested very well for his size, which he did.
Yeah, I like Anthony Nelson. He reminds me of Carl Nassib when he was coming out of Penn State a couple years ago, and I believe Carl Nassib was a 3rd or 4th round pick out of Penn State for the Cleveland Browns, and he's already gone. He's already in Tampa Bay. But Anthony Nelson's a long, fairly athletic, surprisingly athletic kid, wins with power and leverage. I saw him whip the right tackle from Wisconsin, David Edwards. Had a really good game against him. He's a good run defender. He's not going to be a double-digit sack guy. I think he's probably more of a rotational piece on a defensive line. But, I think he fits as a 4-3 defensive end.
Does he have interior, just what I was trying to look up real quick, does he have interior experience as well?
No, I don't believe, not from the games that I've watched. I think he's more of a strict hand in the dirt, play off as as tight as like a 5 technique, but more of like a 7 or 9 outside off the edge.
Got it. Just some notes from here. Stout run defender, had 24 sacks in 3 years at Iowa. Came out of school, had another year of eligibility. Was born and raised. He's an Iowa kid through and through and through. His dad even played college ball there in Iowa, so very, very intriguing prospect there. But I was wondering, is he a true 4-3 defensive end or a 3-4 defensive end? But I guess with his testing scores, you probably want to get him out there on the edge a little bit more there. Next question comes from @Campophobic. I wonder what that's the fear of.
Afraid of camping.
Oh, okay. Is Ty Johnson, the Maryland running back, a scheme fit for the Eagles' offense?
Yeah, I look at Ty Johnson, and in ways He's kind of similar to Wendell Smallwood. He might have a little bit more juice. He was a really good kick returner over the course of his career in Maryland. I do kind of think he's probably more of a third or fourth running back. Wasn't at the combine. I thought he was one of the bigger names left off the list. But, I think you look at a Ty Johnson, and you could see him fitting here in Philadelphia.
All right. Again, it goes back to your all running backs because of the multiplicity of the offense would fit here. A couple more here, and then we're going to get into Fran's pre-combine predictions, some over-unders, and see how he did. At A Bauer 91, as a fan of him from the show Last Chance U, curious on your thoughts of linebacker Dakota Allen and how he did at the combine.
I watched him in the fall, and I kind of liked him. He's a high motor kid. He plays sideline to sideline, really instinctive and tough against the run. He's a little bit smaller, but he's not afraid to come downhill, stick his face into the fan, take on an offensive lineman in the hole, try and stack and shed him and play off the block and get to the football. There are things I like about Dakota Allen. I do want to continue to watch a little bit more, get a better sense of how he is in coverage and is with his ability to play in space. If I remember right, the workout was okay, not great. But I think when you look at Dakota Allen, look, this is a guy that has really kind of seemingly turned the corner. Certainly made some mistakes early in his career. That's how he ended up in Scuba, Mississippi. But went back to Texas Tech for all intents and purposes. Has really kind of turned his life around, and is now ready for this step of the process. So certainly a very interesting name to kind of follow here leading up to the NFL draft.
That's the biggest challenge, and for teams when you look at prospects who go at any point in the draft, more so early on, and you wonder why do ones flame out? Why is there only a 50% success rate in the first round? It's usually A, the program that's bringing them in and whether they can develop the guys properly. It's B, it's on the player himself and just not maximizing that talent. And the question with Dakota Allen, and obviously that's how he ended up at East Mississippi Community College, is he over those mistakes from the past, or is that going to be something that's going to continue to be with them? I was intrigued by him, so I specifically went to listen to his media session with the reporters at the Combine, and he seemed contrite. He seemed like he's saying the right things, and very soft-spoken, very humbled by everything that's happened to him, and certainly the coaches and the personnel execs who bring him in for the one-on-one interviews are going to grill him and go through that a whole lot more, but that's the big challenge is, you try to learn as much as you can in such a short amount of time about these young men and to try to see, whether or not, it goes back to what we were talking about with guys like Damian Harris, like what you're getting from these guys. It's like that's something you don't have to worry about. The football character is not a question mark, and you would love to say that's not an issue with guys, but it certainly is, and it's trying to weigh the risk-reward with each scenario.
I go back to a Bill Belichick quote all the time, and that's, talent sets the floor, character sets the ceiling.
It's a great one.
Steve Kine, the general manager of the Arizona Cardinals, said last week now at his press conference that the two hardest things to evaluate are a guy's heart and a guy's mind.
Of course.
And that's really the whole crux of this process leading up to the NFL draft. The tape's done. We know what the guy can do on film. Now it's a matter of, okay, is the guy going to continue doing that? Does he have the character to be able to sustain that once he reaches the professional ranks? And I think that's I agree with you. When you go look at the first round, you look at the second round, the guys that don't do well, it almost never is because of talent. It's not because, the guy was too small or, he wasn't fast enough, he wasn't talented enough. It was because, there's medical, there's, guys that got hurt. He got hurt.
Certainly, yeah. You can't control that.
Or it's they didn't have the work ethic. They didn't have the drive. They couldn't mesh well with teammates. It's all the other stuff that leads to those guys not having success.
What's great about Doug Peterson and the Eagles locker room is if you don't succeed in this environment here, it's got to be more on the player. Because there's times when it's the team, it's something with the coaching, something along those lines. For me, with the veteran leadership in the locker room, with the way Coach Peterson helps develop the players, the programs put on by guys like Paul Lancaster in the building. It's, they try to do everything possible to get these guys to thrive, not just on the field, but off the field as well. So at some point, it's the player has to look in the mirror and say, I just didn't do enough to get the job done.
Yep.
Our last question comes from @Richard. Let me get these numbers right here. 8506 2907.
That's in like a PIN number or something.
Or phone number or something like that. Yeah, exactly. One name that Richard keeps not hearing as a possible pick at 25 is Ed Oliver. Is he long gone by 25? Are there character concerns, size concerns? Draft community has been somewhat quiet on a guy who was the guy, in all caps, well said, Richard, 6 months ago. And actually, an exercise I would like to do with Tony in one of the upcoming episodes is, do we go like each position and guys who are going to be gone by 25, could be gone by 25, just to start getting a sense, because we were actually having this talk. It was in our hotel room. Did we actually record?
Yeah, it was on the podcast. It was on the podcast.
Was on the podcast. Okay,
it was the draft mailbag of the last episode.
Yes. Okay. So basically, it was like, we keep saying this guy's going to be gone, this guy's going to be gone, this guy's going to be gone. At some point, somebody's going to be there at 25.
Only 24 guys can go. Like, I don't even think there's a need to go position by position, because like there's only 24 slots. Like, the Eagles are picking 25.
Yeah.
So somebody's going to be there. That being said, I don't think Ed Oliver's going to be one of those guys.
Now let's get to Ed Oliver. Yes, I don't think that's going to be the case whatsoever. He only did the explosive jumps, but size. A key win for him was his size, his weight, coming in at that weight. The explosive jump numbers were good. Didn't do the 40, didn't do the shuttle drills. But there's a reason why he was the guy 6 months ago, and I know you still have to do a little more digging on his 2018 tape, but there's certain teams, certain scheme fits where it seems like he should definitely fit in there. So I don't envision him being in the conversation at number 25. But again, he, like you said, Fran, not everyone can go before 25, and
right.
I think Tony was putting out there, there could be 12. Yeah, a dozen defensive line.
I mean, look, there are certainly 12 names that could possibly go.
Yes.
But they can't all go.
No, because again, you've got the quarterbacks.
Right.
They're going to get pushed up. A receiver 2 or 3 are going to go. Where do the tight ends go with Fant's outstanding workout?
Yep.
The offensive line. I know it's not a star-studded group, but Andre Diller, where's he at?
Jawan Taylor, Jonah Williams,
Cody Ford,
Andre Diller, Garrett Bradbury. That's what, 5, 6.
Keep forgetting about Bradbury.
Cody Ford. I mean, there's a lot of names.
There's names, yeah, and those guys are going to go, and there's probably one we could be missing in the process. So yeah, not everyone is going to be. There's going to be a good player, good defensive lineman. Again, this goes back to, if you're the Eagles, if you're an Eagles fan, you want the quarterbacks to go, you want the tight ends to go. Because those are the two positions I feel like, without a doubt, you're not going to address at 25.
Yep.
You can make a case if
corner, potentially.
Yeah, I
potentially.
Potential. Yes, you can go there as well, because I agree with you in a sense. And Howie said it. We've invested a lot of resources at the position. At some point, you need those guys to grow and develop. You can't keep drafting another guy and stunting the player who you already have's growth unless you know that player is not going to ascend. So those are your questions. Phenomenal questions. Once again, I love how that process has exploded in the last week or so in terms of the amount of questions.
That time of year.
And we're getting questions about other teams, which is great as well. So we should write down somewhere. I forget whose recommendation it was. We need to do an Around the NFC East segment.
Sure.
Starting next week.
All right, next week.
All right, so had a little fun, did a little on the clock with Fran.
Okay, this was pre-combine.
Pre-combine.
Yep.
Just having some fun, some over-unders, things of that nature. So the first one, Kyler Murray, we've been talking about him on pretty much every episode. So the big story going into the combine was, what would Kyler Murray's height and weight be? Okay, so we did over-under 5'9 3/4 for the height, and 202 pounds for the weights.
Will I go under?
You went under, and he went over.
He went over. Okay.
He went over.
2 L's.
So,
Yeah.
You bounced back. Arizona State guard Regis Crawford set a mark of 6.07 seconds in the 40, the slowest at the combine since 2003. Would that number fall this year? And you were like, no chance.
Right.
Yeah. I actually don't have
who the slowest was.
I don't have who the slowest was, but it did not get near.
I think it might have been Nate Herbig.
And he was still.
He was in the 5.6s, I think.
I was going to say
Right.
maybe you get to the 5.8s, but no, did not get anywhere near 6.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
we'll actually touch on that at the end of the segment here.
Sure.
All right. The best 40 time will be set by either an offensive player or defensive player.
Okay.
You remember where you went?
Did I go offense?
You went offense.
And it was defense?
It was Zedric Woods, the safety.
Safety.
Ole
Which I
Miss,
didn't see that coming at all.
4.29
Yeah,
official.
didn't see that coming.
4.29 on that one. The second best time of the combine in the 40 last year was 4.34. Would that be surpassed? And yes, it was, and you correctly called that one
Okay.
there. So no surprise there. Again, with 4.3 or 4.29 being the best one. Next one here, I had would someone surpass 42 inches in the vertical jump? The recent best was Chris Conley from Georgia, the wide receiver, had 45. The best a year ago, Terrell Edmonds, the linebacker who went to Buffalo, and Mike Gesicki, the Penn State tight end who went to Miami. They had 41.5 inches, so I said it at 40.
Couple people did, right?
Couple people did.
Yeah.
Juan Thornhill was the overall winner, 44 inches, but you had listed a couple of names. Certainly a couple of players did surpass
Okay.
that.
Great.
Next one here. Okay, we were talking about Mike Gesicki there. Would there be, true or false, would there be another freak show performance out of a Penn State player? You could look at Chris Godwin in 17, Saquon and Troy Apke a year ago.
This is all opinion based. Freak show performance.
I think there's got to be some numbers
That
to
are-
justify it. It is
Okay.
opinion, yes,
Yeah.
but
I would say
so
probably no, right?
and you said fall. Miles Sanders was the one who we expected to
But
be
he
the
was
best.
Just, he was just
he was
okay.
fine, and he was
fine.
above
It was
average.
good, yeah, it was above average. across
Good
the board.
average, but not like
So I said no on the freak show.
you were correct. Yes,
Okay.
you said false. Okay. Next one here: bench press injuries. Okay. Set the over under at 1.5. You took the under.
Won
And it
the
was
under.
just the under.
And it was a bad one. It was good. Kendall Sheffield. I think the report. I think Tom Pelissaro said it was a torn pec.
Yeah, it's an absolute
It's a shame.
shame. So we were discussing about this. You were saying that you think the players get more out of it, the bench press, just because of getting hyped up and the competition factor, and
Yeah.
you know, from the
Maybe
players who-
maybe teams do look at the bench press. I don't know.
I'm sure it's
I'm
it's
sure
a
they do.
it's probably a baseline.
I'm sure.
You know, it's Josh Hinks, our head strength coach, was actually one of the coaches helping with the form. So if you were in Indianapolis and all you heard was lockout, you know, that was Josh Hinks from
There
the
you go.
Eagles manning that one there. Let's see. So two more here. Next was blank would emerge as the biggest winner
Ooh.
of the NFL scouting combine. Do you
Who did I
have
say?
any recollection?
Did I say like Rashawn Gary?
You said Rashawn Gary.
Okay.
And I'll give you a half point
Sure.
for that because he was one of Tony's position winners. Okay, I would say he was the big winner, but he still
Who was the big winner? DK Metcalf. I mean, like in terms of public perception.
That's
like,
public perception.
public perception is probably DK Metcalf.
DK Metcalf, yeah. Now your offensive player, you gave because you went above and
I
beyond.
I gave you one each.
Come
Who
on
did I-
now.
on offense. Who did I
Yeah.
say? Who?
I gave you another half point for your
offense
selection
one?
here. Yes, he's not really named in it, but he had a very 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 good workout though in Indy.
Who was it?
Wide receiver Paris Campbell.
Ah, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
and he had a great workout.
Yeah, so I give you another half
All
point
right,
for
there
that
you go.
one.
So that's
there.
1 point.
That's a good. Who would you say was the big winner? Metcalf is the one that everyone's fawning over.
I think that to me, if you're going to go public perception, it's probably
Kyler Murray?
DK Metcalf. Kyler Murray didn't do anything though. He just like
But he
weighed
weighed in
He literally weighed in, and like everyone's like, yeah.
You actually, on that pre-combine podcast, we talked about the height weight, and you said the only way weight-wise he goes over. You may have called this perfectly. He'll go over, but he will not do any drills in Indy.
'cause and I wonder about this with like Ed Oliver too. Is like I wonder if it's like okay, I'm going to weigh in, make sure I weigh in right,
Load up.
not test, and then if I come in a few pounds heavy or lighter at my pro day and test, no, it won't be a big deal.
Okay, the last one here, we talked about the poor 40 time back in the day of Regis Crawford. Rich Eisen of NFL Network, he has crossed the 6-second threshold 3 times previously. Would it be 4th time this year? You said true. He came in
He
6
came in
flat.
6 flat. So do I
Six
get the
flat.
push or what? Do I get the point on the push?
No, it's got to cross it.
It's gotta cross.
It's a yes or no. It's not over under. If it was over under 6, and then it'd be a push. But no, it was
Tough crowd.
Yeah. So I eased up. I gave you half points on
Yeah, all right.
Campbell and Gary. You know, could have been like no, but But no, gave you some love there. So phenomenal job as always.
Thank you.
Great week in Indy.
Great week.
So
Great week.
Always is.
It always is.
But Fran's got a lot of film study to get to.
Yep.
A lot of players to push through.
That's right.
You got the players you didn't get to see before, and now you got the players who's piqued your interest.
We're going to start prepping for our Meet the Prospect series on PhiladelphiaEagles.com. So keep an eye out for that. Probably next week, maybe.
Indeed.
Probably next week, maybe.
Got to give a shout out to Chris Barletto, doing a phenomenal job this week behind the glass, helping make this podcast become a reality. And again, thank you out there for listening wherever you are consuming your podcast. Make sure to rate, review, leave a comment. That's going to do it for this week's edition of the Journey to the Draft podcast. For Fran Duffy, I'm Chris McPherson. We'll be back again next week.